I want to thank all the folks who have taken so much time and effort to put together what we think is a very excellent, high-quality professional development activity for you in this two-day session. I also want to thank them for giving me the coveted after-lunch speaking designation. It's a wonderful time slot to have, and you know, we got you. You know, you got you something to eat, and it's a nice afternoon, and it's nice and dark back there. It's going to be an exciting session. But I am going to try to spend about the next hour or so with you talking about a little bit about some of the change that's occurred in the state of Tennessee in public education, and in particular in our school system, and talk a little bit about where we're going from here as we move forward together. Here's sort of the agenda for our session together. And before I get into that, let me just say this to you as well. I really want to thank you for being here today. I really appreciate the fact that you are here on your own time, that you're here voluntarily, and that you're here because you are true professionals and you care about enhancing your craft, getting better at what you do, and you are deeply committed to our children. So thank you for being here. It really is pretty remarkable. We've got about 3,500 educators from Knox County schools in this Charting the Course professional development over the next few days. So it really is quite extraordinary that virtually all of our teachers and school leaders have voluntarily come together to learn more about the Common Core standards and where we're going as a school system together. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do a couple of some introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about some folks. We're going to talk about change. There's been a lot of change that we've experienced in the last few years. Talk about the impact that your work is having, even in an era of great change and transition. The hard work that you're doing is making a positive impact in terms of student results. We'll talk about that. Certainly we're going to talk about the Common Core, and what I hope to be able to do is talk about how the Common Core aligns with all of what we're trying to accomplish as a school system, as a state with regard to public education. Talk about the importance of collaboration and working together. Talk about investment. We've had a lot of conversation about our budget and what level of investment we need to make in order to provide an outstanding education to our kids, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then sort of have our all aboard moment, talk about where we're going from here and how we move forward together. So we're going to do that. For those of you who might be sitting there expecting me to state my objective, I'm going to do that. Our objective for today is to explore the relationships between and among recent changes in public education in Tennessee and Knox County, and to understand how these changes and the Common Core standards will align with and support our strategic educational goals. So, introductions. It is really a wonderful privilege for me this week to, in one fell swoop, have the opportunity to speak to virtually all of our teachers in Knox County schools. I've been superintendent for 4 years, but I've really never had that opportunity. I've met a lot of you. I've talked with a lot of you about the job that you do. I've been in probably most of your classrooms, but I don't think I've really introduced myself to you in a way that you got to know me as a person. So I thought I'd take a minute, since I have you as a captive audience today, to talk a little bit about myself and introduce you, just so you know a little bit about who I am as a person. Dr. Alves talked a little bit about my professional background and where I've been and what I've done. I was a teacher at Vincent Gray Alternative High School in East St. Louis, Illinois. And I was a teacher only for a short time, but that was an incredibly important and formative experience for me. It gave me a deep appreciation of the work that you do, an understanding of the challenges that you face, and really a respect for the incredible work that you do with our children. It was also formative for me in the sense of really solidifying for me what I wanted my life's work to be, to make sure that I was involved in the development and the growth and the teaching of children for the rest of my professional career. And so that had a huge impact on where I am today. As Dr. Alves said, I was the budget director and the chief operating officer for the Boston Public Schools, and I had the great privilege to work for a superintendent by the name of Tom Payzant, who was a great educator and I think a highly respected superintendent. And he really had the perspective, as I do, that how you allocate your resources, how you spend your money, really should be a reflection of your educational priorities. And so as budget director and chief operating officer, I had the opportunity not only to be involved in the financial conversation and the operational and administrative conversation, but to be deeply involved also in the educational conversation in the Boston Public Schools when I was there for about 11 years in Massachusetts. I consider myself a family guy. You have a picture here of my wife and my two boys. It's a little bit of an older picture, but it's the best one I have of all of us in orange, so I thought that would be most appropriate to share with you. That's at Neyland Stadium, and we had a great time at one of the football games a while back. That's an important part of who I am. So I'm not just a superintendent, I'm also a father in our school system. I have my two boys are both, as you might expect, enrolled in the Knox County schools, and my younger son is moving into 5th grade at Bluegrass Elementary School, and my older son is going to be a 7th grader at West Valley Middle School. So I also have a renewed appreciation for our middle school teachers. Thank you for all that you do, and you're very special people. I try to integrate technology into our work and the work that I do. I'm not necessarily the most tech-savvy person on the planet, but I do try to do some of that. And I haven't done Facebook, but I have become a Twitterer, if that's the right term. So if you wish to, you can follow me on Twitter at Knox School Souped. And I typically don't tweet during the day because our internet provider blocks it. But I do tend to, in the evening, sometimes get on and do a little bit of providing information and commentary on Twitter. So feel free to follow me, and I'll follow you back, and we'll have a nice conversation. Just in terms of what I do and like, I'm a big fan of the Red Sox. My family and I have really embraced being East Tennesseans and love all things volunteer, football, basketball, lady vols. We love to be out in the Smoky Mountains and hiking, and really have embraced this community as our own. I drink way too much Coca-Cola. I don't drink coffee, so I drink it in the morning, just so you know. And I enjoy running. I injured my foot about a year ago, so I haven't been able to do that as much. But I've gotten to that place in my life where my son, who's 12, is on the cross-country team at West Valley Middle School. And so I've come to the realization that he will forever run faster than I can now. So I've come to that kind of sad place in my life where that happens. And I am a newly minted, although somewhat reluctant, dog person. We just got a dog. Yeah, some of you are pet owners, I suppose, right? That's a new experience for me, but I know it's something that some people enjoy. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, but and then I think finally, when I think about how I think of myself professionally, that last bullet is what it's about. I consider myself an educator, as I know you do, and that is really the lens through which I try to see the world and my role in it, to try to make sure that I make decisions every day that benefit children, and that I see my role as trying to make sure we are deeply involved in the development, the growth, and the teaching of young people in our world. And that's a little bit about me. It also occurred to me that I've been here 4 years, and in each of those 4 years I've had the opportunity to speak to our principals and our assistant principals at some length and really talk about our vision for the school system and also my expectations and for our school leaders and my commitments to them as their superintendent. But that I haven't really done that with our teachers and with our other educators in the school system. And so I thought I'd just take a moment, if you don't mind. I've kind of adapted these. These are typically what I share with our school principals, but I adapted them a little bit to teachers, and classroom teachers in particular. And so I thought I would just share with you my expectations for you and my commitments to you in terms of the work that we do together. The first one is, and it's first for a reason, it's the most important one. The first one is that we make decisions based on what's best for children, first, foremost, and always. that we work hard and focus relentlessly on high quality teaching and student achievement. I think it's important that honesty and integrity are part of our job requirements and continue to be part of our job requirements. When our job is teaching young people and developing young people, we have to be models of integrity and honesty, and that's part of what we are, I think, required to do. You report to your principal. I say that to our principals when I say they report to me, and I say that for just as a reminder that we have lots of, I think, very well-meaning and well-intentioned folks, people and organizations in our community that want to be a part of the work that we do and support the work that we do. And we really invite that, we want that, we seek those partnerships and value those partnerships. But it's important to remember that our school principals are the ones that really set the vision and direction for our individual schools and are charged with moving forward in that direction. And so when you think about if there are questions or concerns or issues that you may have, that those should be directed to your supervisor, to your principal, and so that they are in a position to provide that leadership and make sure that you have the support that you need to do your job effectively and efficiently and to move forward. And that, you know, that while there'll be lots of partnerships that we have, and there are lots of organizations, even political bodies that may want to have an influence and a say and a role in the work that we do, and ultimately we want them to, it is really the charge of our school principals to provide direction and leadership and move us forward. Number 5, to use data analysis to support decision making. I think we're getting pretty good at doing that. The next is communicate, and that's a pretty straightforward one. I think it's of value to all of us to be forthright, to talk about if we have questions or concerns or issues, that we really work those through as professionals, that we communicate our questions, our concerns, and that we're open and forthright. That we set goals that are tied to our educational mission and that we seek to achieve them. That we provide services, educational services to our kids equitably and to our families equitably according to policy and always with a student focus. That we're thoughtful, collaborative, and innovative about the work that we do. And I think really as a school system, Knox County Schools has a long, proud tradition of creativity and innovation in instruction. And I'm really proud of that. And as I said, I've been in many of your classrooms and I've seen the great work that you're doing. And I think that's one where we've done really a wonderful job. Number 10 is conflict is okay as long as it is a conflict of ideas and not personal. In fact, conflict is encouraged, a conflict of ideas is encouraged because it is through different perspectives and through talking through those different perspectives and mediating and reconciling those different perspectives that we learn and that we grow and that we get better together. And so I would say that is an important expectation. And then, but number 11, I think, is equally important, and that is that once the decision is made, we really invite input and feedback and different perspectives and different thoughts and ideas, and to be challenged in the decision-making process, in the policy-making process. But once the decision is made, my expectation would be that we stand together, we walk out of the room together, we stand together shoulder to shoulder, and we implement that decision as if it were our own, with that kind of passion and enthusiasm, even if there were questions or concerns or that you had voiced in the decision-making process. Tell your principals what they need to know, that there are no surprises that come up. Build capacity for the long term. Again, I think we've done tremendous work, and I think we have seen, and I'll talk about some of our results in a few minutes, we're really seeing solid academic progress. I want to make sure that great work that we've done in the Knox County Schools continues for the long term, that we're focused on building capacity for that next generation of great teachers and great leaders to continue to provide a terrific education to our kids. Attend and meaningfully participate in required school meetings. That really, I don't think it probably goes unstated, but and I think a testament to that is your attendance here in this 2-day seminar on charting the course, which is completely voluntary. And then we hold each other accountable for these expectations. The commitments that I make to you, on the other hand, are that I will also make decisions based on what's best for children. And if that's how you go about doing your job, I'm going to have your back. That's the right way for us to be making decisions. Do what's best for kids. Honesty and integrity are job requirements for me too. I hold myself to that standard that I ask you to hold yourself to, and I hope you'll hold me to it as well. Number 5 is that I will articulate a vision and a direction for our school system and ask you and expect you to work toward it, but I'll also recognize your expertise in terms of how to achieve that vision and how to achieve that direction in your classroom, and recognize that you are an expert in the education of your children, and I will try to avoid giving directives when possible and really rely on just setting the parameters and letting you go about doing your job. And then finally, I may be tough, but I will certainly try to be fair. So those are my expectations and commitments. I said I would do a few introductions, and I'm going to introduce you to Leland and Jane L. Stanford. Now, what I tried to do was go back and find some people who had, keeping with our railroad theme, that had both connections to railroads and to education. And it was a hard task. I had to go back to the 1860s to really find a good example. Just to give you a sense of how difficult it was, my runner-up was the little engine that could. So, it was a pretty tough task here. So this is Leland and Jane L. Stanford. They are both railroad people and educators. Stanfords are here, obviously a very handsome couple. They made millions as so-called robber barons in the railroad industry. But then tragically, their only son died when he was 15 years old, and they founded Stanford University in his name. So they became educators. We happen to have a relationship with Stanford University. We're a participant in the LEADS network, which is a network of major school systems around the country that's facilitated by Stanford University. That's just by the way. We'll get to Leland in a little bit. He's actually a really interesting historical character. I kind of think of him as sort of an 18th century Forrest Gump. He shows up in all kinds of interesting historical moments throughout the mid-1800s, and we'll talk about him in a minute. But for a second, let's talk about Jane. Jane Stanford was the First Lady of California. Obviously, Leland was Governor of California in 1862, founder of Stanford University and the Leland Stanford Museum. But Jane said something to the Board of Trustees at Stanford University in 1903 that as I was trying to find some railroad/education people, really struck me. And what she said was this: you have my entire confidence in your ability and your determination to do earnest, conscientious work to the very best advantage to the students. They to be considered paramount to all and everything else. So what Jane has said in her sort of tight Victorian prose here really captured the essence of what I'm feeling more than 100 years later and a half a continent away. First and foremost, that obviously our students are of paramount importance. That's the center of why we do what we do and the work that we do. But also, I'm just so proud of what you have done, what you've accomplished as educators, and I have just enormous confidence in your ability to continue to do the extraordinary work that you do in your classrooms and continue to move us forward as a school system and as a community in providing our students with the opportunity to have a bright, competitive, and successful future. So I really greatly appreciate the work that you do and really just recognize the extraordinary commitment that you have to our kids. And I think Jane sort of captured that a little bit in this quotation. I'll get back to Leland in a few minutes, but let me talk a little bit about change. We've had change, I would say, in abundance in the last few years in the state of Tennessee and in the Knox County schools when we think about how we do the work of educating children. Much of it very positive and probably very necessary change. But change can be hard. Change can be challenging. But it also can bring us to a better place, and especially when it comes to educating children. I'm going to go through a series of, take a quick look at some of those changes that we've experienced. I'm not going to spend all that much time on it just because, well, you've lived it, so you know a lot of these changes. But just to recap what some of the changes have been, we've increased our academic standards in the state of Tennessee. We've put in place a new evaluation system in the form of the team evaluation and also expanded TAP here in the Knox County schools. I don't know if everybody knows what TAP is. Probably most of you do. TAP used to be called the Teacher Advancement Program. It's now just TAP. It's just the acronym. And it started in Tennessee. It started in 4 schools here in Knox County. And it had 4 basic elements that you'll actually recognize. Teacher leadership in the form of mentor and master teachers. Teacher collaboration in the form of teachers working together to really hone their craft. It had an accountability component that utilized the instructional rubric that we now use as the evaluation model for team, and strategic compensation, performance-based pay. So what you may recognize is that in the TAP model are 4 components that we've seen work and have recognized the value of and tried to really expand across all of our schools in Knox County. And what you also may know is that the TAP instructional rubric was the basis of the rubric we now use as the evaluation instrument, as in fact it's the default instrument for the state of Tennessee. So in our 4 schools here in Knoxville, we really started a lot of those practices that have now become fairly standard across the state. And we've expanded TAP formally from 4 schools to 18 schools. So while most of our schools were implementing the team evaluation system, 14 of our schools were experiencing TAP for the first time. Strategic compensation, which is APEX, I'll say a little bit about that in a minute. New teacher leadership roles, collaborative conferencing instead of collective bargaining, and tenure restructuring. And of course, the Common Core standards, which, as we say, are coming down the track. Now, I'll recognize that also for our teachers in kindergarten through grade 2, I'm talking about the Common Core in the future tense, mostly in this presentation, and I think we probably have throughout the day and probably will tomorrow. But for our teachers in kindergarten through grade 2, it's here now. We've put it in place this past year. We're working through how to make sure that we embrace the Common Core standards effectively, but it's not a future thing. It's not down the track. It's here right now. So where have we been in terms of some of the changes that we made? I think when I talk about and think about change in Knox County schools and direction and vision, one of the things that I think about is our strategic plan. We spent a good amount of time in 2008, 2009 thinking about what our interests, our priorities, our aspirations for our children in our community were with regard to public education. And y'all were, actually many of y'all were a big part of that conversation as we developed a strategic plan and the Board of Education adopted it in 2009. That strategic plan is entitled Excellence for All Children, and you may know it has 4 primary goal areas. The first being focus on the student, effective educators, that's you, engaged parents and community, and then infrastructure to support learning. And so that was, I think, an important moment in setting the tone and the direction for where we're going as a school system. We talked about additional high standards. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Teacher leadership, PLCs, professional learning communities, recognition of the power of collaboration and the power of leveraging a teacher's expertise in one classroom to support and help grow other teachers in that same school system, in the same school building. And then the work that we've done around research-based instructional strategies with the research of Robert Marzano. So a lot of good sort of solid foundational things that we've done to prepare for some of this change. That's a little bit more on the strategic plan. And by the way, I will post this we'll post this presentation on the website for charting the course, so you'll have all of this. And our full strategic plan is online. Yeah, so this is it. What has come to be known as the Golden Spike, right? Keeping with our railroad theme. This was the sort of the marriage, the coming together, the connection of the Central Pacific and the Union Pacific Railroads. The last rail, this is connecting east to west. The last rail was laid with a ceremonial golden spike at Promontory Point, Utah on May 10th, 1869. And it finally made the railroad system in the United States transcontinental, allowed it to go from east to west and to travel goods and people and across the entire country. There was a lot to overcome in order to make this happen. Difficult mountainous terrain, engineering challenges, financial issues, and a deep public skepticism that we would ever be able to do this. And it did forever change commerce and transportation in our country, and hopefully in some positive ways. So why are we talking about the golden spike? Why is it relevant to our conversation today? It's relevant today because it represents an important and long-sought connection between two related but heretofore unlinked tracks. And as I've said, coming into this, we've been on a couple tracks in our quest for outstanding education in our community and our state. The first track, I think for the last several years, I would say our school system, our state, and even our federal government have been chugging full throttle down a couple different tracks. They've been very much related, but sometimes I think we found them to be separate. The first track is high standards, rigorous academic standards for our kids. We've done a couple things in the last few years that have moved us in a positive direction on that front, that have moved us down the track on that front. The Tennessee Diploma Project was a really important change that really increased the graduation requirements at the high school level and increased the rigor of some of our academic standards, really K through 12. Excellence for All Children, our strategic plan, as we've talked about, particularly the first goal area, focus on the student, puts a great premium on making sure that every child has access to high quality instruction and rigorous instruction, and that we have high expectations for all of our kids. And then Race to the Top, I think, really kind of raised the stakes a little bit in terms of a national competition, and one of the four assurances, as they say, is high standards. And so I think we've been moving along, I think very nicely along this track of moving to more rigorous academic standards and having high expectations for our kids. On another track, an incredibly important track that we've been on and traveling down, has been enhancing effective instruction. Our focus on research-based instructional strategies, particularly the work of Robert Marzano, I think has moved us forward in terms of instructional practices. I think our professional learning communities, our PLCs, the opportunity for colleagues to work together to enhance their craft and their instructional practices has been incredibly important in that. And then I think this year has really been a sea change in our efforts and our urgency around ensuring that we have great instruction happening in every classroom every day, in the expansion of TAP and the implementation of the new team evaluation model. So we've had these two, I think, really important ideals and priorities happening. One around high standards and moving down the track of high standards, the other moving down the track of effective instruction, related but sometimes disconnected. And for us, I think the Common Core is going to be our golden spike. The Common Core is, as a curriculum, or more really as a set of standards that are tied to research and aligned to most effective instructional practices. The Common Core, I think, finally and comprehensively connects the tracks of rigorous expectations and effective instructional practice. It brings what I would call a fundamental coherence to the work that we do, and giving us a set of standards that actually complements, that deepens, and enhances our classroom work, the work that we do for children in our classrooms. So I am hopeful that this will be a structure that won't feel like a new piece of work, an additional piece of work, but it'll feel like a structure that brings together some of the elements that we have been working very diligently on over the last few years, and will bring that together in a way that is coherent and aligned and makes sense to you as a classroom teacher. So you've heard a lot about the Common Core today, right? So I'm not going to go into too much detail because you've had the presentation on Common Core and you've had a lot of details about it. I will say that it's, I'm sure others have said this, but one of the things that's probably important about it is that it's actually an interesting movement in that it's somewhat organic. It's coming from the states and not through No Child Left Behind or federal initiative. It's really grown up out of the states, and there are now 45 states that are on board. There may be some more. Texas probably never will. It's the Lone Star thing. They'll always be on their own. But probably, if I had to guess, I'll bet we'll get pretty close to almost every state being part of the Common Core standards. And why is it necessary here in Tennessee? And this is a graphic that we've been given by the State Department of Education, and I think it's relevant and important because it highlights a disconnect that I think we really need to be taking a hard look at. If you look at the top statistic and sort of the statistic on the right, the first one says that only 21% of adults in Tennessee have a college degree. And the other one says that 54% of new jobs will require post-secondary education. That's a pretty yawning gap for us to bridge as a state in terms of preparing our students for their future, making sure that they have the knowledge and skills and competencies and preparedness to be successful in their future. And so I think the Common Core is quite necessary for us to engage in at this time. Why is it important? How is it related? You've talked a lot about this, so I won't belabor it too much, but a couple of highlights. One is that it is clear, coherent, focused, and rigorous. But I think also what you're going to see is that there are fewer standards that are going to allow us to go further in depth. I think you're actually, as teachers, going to enjoy that. I think sometimes we've had so many standards that we've had to cover. It's felt very rushed. It's felt like you had to, maybe we don't quite have mastery yet, but I got to move on, or I'm not going to get to the end of all of the standards. This is an opportunity to really dig in. This is an opportunity to really focus on a fewer number of standards and go much further in depth. There's a great emphasis, and again, I know you've covered some of this, but there's a great emphasis on conceptual understanding and not just acquisition of knowledge, although that's incredibly important, but also application of knowledge. Making connections between pieces of information and dynamics and things that are going on so that our students are engaged in and demonstrating and learning some of those 21st century skills that we know are so important. Problem solving, critical thinking, analysis, and synthesis, and it allows us to really go deeper in a lot of the content that we're looking at and talking about. I can talk a little bit more about it, but I know you've covered a lot of this in the morning session, so I won't get too deep into it. We can certainly talk if there are questions as we go forward. But on this slide, I guess what I would highlight is that with the Common Core standards, we've also tried to learn both from research and from experience around the country and around the globe what works and what kind of skills our kids are going to need, what kind of competencies they're going to need to be successful both in post-secondary education and beyond. And because we're really preparing them for a future set of challenges and perhaps occupations that may not even exist today, and to make sure that they're well equipped to take that on. I think this slide, you may have seen this, it's something that the State Department has put together, but again, I think brings together the concepts of high standards and effective instructional practices with the Common Core and sort of ties them together again, that the high standards and student readiness, the student readiness and post-secondary education in the workforce is why we teach. That's the outcome we're looking for. TEAM and TAP and the new evaluation model is the how of teaching. And then the Common Core standards provide us with the what we teach. And so there's this relationship between and among all of those dynamics that I think is important and hopefully, again, makes some good common sense to you. To further reinforce that, and you may have started hearing about some of this, you will certainly hear more about it. We had close to 1,000 educators who've been to the Common Core training this summer. And one of the things that the State Department of Education has begun to emphasize with the Common Core training is that connection to the team and the instructional rubric. And that there is this notion of the core four, that there are 4 indicators that we want to look at and emphasize, certainly not to the exclusion of the others, but to recognize that these 4 are very closely related to the types of skills that our kids will need to have and demonstrate with the new Common Core curriculum. And those are thinking, academic feedback, problem solving, and questioning. And those will continue to be incredibly important in our work together. The time frame, you know, grades kindergarten through 2 are already in the Common Core standards. We're moving to a partial implementation of mathematics, grades 3 through 8 for the coming year, and then the whole enchilada, as it were, in 2013-14. The new assessment, where Tennessee is part of the PARC assessment consortium, the new assessments will begin in 2014-15, and the state will have a transition plan for how we transition from TCAP to the PARC assessments over that period of time. And so that's what we're looking at moving forward. So just to kind of summarize this notion of the Common Core and how it brings things together, I think it does meaningfully connect and align high standards and effective instructional practices. I honestly think we're actually pretty well positioned as a school system to make this transition. I'll tell you why. If I were standing up here and we hadn't moved to higher standards 3 years ago, and we hadn't put in place the new evaluation system with the new instructional rubric, I'd be really pretty worried about this transition because this is some high-level work. This is some very sophisticated instruction and some very sophisticated skills that our kids are going to need to learn. But the fact that we've moved to higher academic standards, that you all have embraced that and lived with that for a few years, the fact that we have now put in place very clear expectations about instruction in the new evaluation system, I think are positioning us extremely well to make this transition successfully and smoothly moving forward. And so I'm excited about it. And I think ultimately this is an instructional framework, the Common Core is, that is going to allow us to help our kids to have the opportunity for a bright and successful future, regardless of what it is they choose to do with their lives in the future. Collaboration is, as I've said throughout, I think incredibly important, and I think is going to be even more urgent and necessary moving forward, and I think complements well what we're trying to accomplish as a school system. And let me talk to you about just a couple of the realities that I think impact that. One is that we've made a collective commitment to excellence for all children. I talked a little bit about some of the achievement gaps that are emerging, and that we certainly are trying to make some progress in closing, and I think making some progress in that direction. But that's a reality that we really do have to address, and I think we best address it as a team. I think we best address it together. I think individually we probably each have some real important skills that we can share and learn from each other that can help us to make sure that all kids have the opportunity to be successful in our school system. I think there are some structures in our current accountability system that just really by their nature reinforce the fact that we are interdependent and that we are inextricably linked in terms of all of our classrooms and all of our schools across the school system. The first is that for the district accountability system, meeting our AMOs, which are our annual measurable objectives, in order for the school system to meet our objectives, our AMOs, our state targets for student achievement, those are rolled up from the individual school targets. And so for us to be successful collectively, each of our individual schools has to be successful. And so it ties and I think binds us in ways that are new to our accountability system, and in ways that I think make our collective success somewhat inextricable. And then school-wide growth will continue as part of the team and TAP systems. And we can certainly debate what proportion of an individual teacher evaluation should be made up of school-wide growth. And I know we will have that discourse throughout this year and beyond with the team evaluation system. But I contend that there should be some proportion of an individual teacher evaluation that perhaps should be school-wide academic growth. And the reason is, one, I think that we as educators, as teachers, have an impact beyond just our own classroom. Certainly we impact the learning and the culture of the school, but more importantly, I think we impact and can have an influence on the culture of learning in our school and in providing support and your expertise to others of your colleagues in your school. So that notion of collective responsibility and collective accountability and collegiality and working together as a team, I think is enormously important, and I think is reinforced when school-wide growth is a part of the individual teacher evaluations. And so we continue to move, and I've seen this transition happen, I think, in our system from these are my students to these are our students. All of our students are all of our students. And I think together we can more effectively do the work that we do to enhance instruction and find student success. This slide is really just to say that I think that professional learning communities, team and TAP, and the Common Core fit very nicely together. They are sort of mutually reinforcing. They allow us to continue the work that we are doing, and I think deepen the work that we're doing to ensure student success. And so what I plan to do is we, somewhat intentionally, we did not emphasize professional learning communities this past year as much as we had in prior years. And the reason was because we were moving to the new evaluation system and we wanted that to be the focus and the emphasis. But I think it's this coming year we will put more of an emphasis back on professional learning communities, on working together to improve the work that we do for students, and on team in the old-fashioned way, the non-acronym way of working together as a team. To make sure that we do the best possible work that we can for our students. And so I think you'll see that reinforced throughout this school year, and really getting back to the notion of that together, we really are stronger than we are individually, and we can really leverage that moving forward. I'm running out of time, but I want to spend at least a couple minutes on talking about investment. And obviously the work that we do and all of our focus and effort will be enhanced and supported by having an appropriate investment of resources to help us do this work effectively. And I was really, the last couple of budget years have been challenging, but I was really happy with the budget dialogue that we had as a community this past spring. It was a very public discourse on what level of investment we need to make in our schools to ensure we provide a great education to our kids. And I think it was a very healthy dialogue. We didn't get all of what we wanted, but we got a good, we got an additional $7 million over natural revenue growth, and so that was a good thing. What we tried to do the last few years is really, when we've made resource decisions, when we've had difficult times, we had to make cuts to our budget, we tried to keep those as far away from the classroom as possible, try to focus those in the central office and operational administrative areas. And this year I was really pleased. Dr. Alves and her team put together I think an excellent analysis of where we've spent our money and what kind of results we've gotten from that. It's called the ROI report, Return on Investment Report. It's also on our website at knoxschools.org, and I would really invite you to take a look at it. Basically a program evaluation of some of the most important investments that we've made over the last few years, and if we're getting the bang for the buck from them that we want to. And where we're not, what kind of adjustments do we need to be making? And so you'll see some of those adjustments in the coming year. And I think that will, the discussion will continue. We are a pretty efficient and effective organization from a resource perspective, but we'll continue to be as lean and as effective as we can be. The budget for this year is $404 million. We saw, as I said, an additional $7 million in funding over and above natural revenue growth. We're gonna invest that wisely in some things that we know work. Teacher supports in particular. I talked about the impact of that early literacy, that first grade reading initiative. We saw that the professional development and the materials and the support in the form of instructional coaching really has made a difference. So we want to do that more broadly across elementary literacy and more broadly across the entire school system at all grades. And then, lots of good things in here. I would say early literacy and full day kindergarten being another one that is incredibly important. Lots of great stuff. I'm glad to talk with you about that or answer questions about that when we get to it. I will say this, the fiscal year 14 budget discussion, so the budget that begins July 1st of 2013, really is going to begin in the next couple weeks. What we did this past year is we had some opportunities for teachers to plug into that conversation. We had a couple of different teacher town hall meetings. We had a couple of what I call teacher talks, which are smaller meetings among teachers. But really, I think what happened was our focus for this past year was on the new evaluation system and on learning the new instructional rubric. And so I think that was rightly the focus of a lot of what we did. So what I'd like to do again this year, and probably do it more comprehensively and more deeply, is get you all involved in this conversation about what investments we need to make to help you do your job more effectively. What investments do we need to make in order to support you, in order to find additional success for our kids and really move forward And it will be based on proven instructional strategies and educational strategies. But I also do recognize that one of the things that we need to address are the deficiencies in teacher and staff salaries. And that's something where it was actually part of the discussion last spring, but it kind of got lost in the shuffle. I think it kind of got, that did not become the focus of the public conversation. But it is something that we need to do and something that I'd like to do. And over the long term, we really need to, we rank 37th in the state in average teacher salary, and that to me is not where we need to be. It's not, it doesn't reflect the value that you all provide and the work that you do in our classrooms, and certainly not the value that you provide to our school system and to our community. So that is something I want to address. And I really would like for you all to be a part of that dialogue and discussion this spring. I think you bring great, I want to hear from you. I want your ideas and thoughts about how best to present the budget, how best to really paint a picture of what resources we need to put where in order to best help you do your job most effectively. And that's always going to be based on research and experience and what we know will be the best strategies. But I really would love to have you engaged in that conversation as we move forward. All right, so here we go, all aboard. What are we going to do moving forward? We're going to continue to accelerate our efforts to provide high quality instruction and every day in every classroom. Continue our focus on student learning and success. Really keep the focus of the strategies of team and TAP, of high expectations and the new Common Core standards, and professional learning communities that are going to be mutually reinforcing and help us be successful, and then just work together to make sure that we achieve our goal of excellence for all children. When we got into a lot of change last year, one of the things that when I talked to teachers, I said there were two things that I just would ask you to do. When there's lots of different things happening, it's good to focus on just a couple things. So this is my simple advice for success in times of great change, and it's two very simple things. One, teach the kids. Do the job that you love to do and that you're excellent at doing, and do it with passion and enthusiasm. And then keep learning. Be open to collaborate with your colleagues, to opportunities like this for professional growth, and continue to keep learning and keep improving what we do for our children every day. And so I want to say thank you, and I appreciate what you do in our classrooms every day, and I really appreciate your commitment to our children, and let's go ahead and have a great school year. Thank you.